Please pray with me. Holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations upon all of our hearts be worthy in your sight and in keeping with the teachings of your Son, Jesus Christ, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Last month, I was taking a walk around the church in wintertime, like a sane person does, when I noticed something sticking out of one of the bushes that surrounded the fellowship hall. I was immediately disturbed and took what was a good picture at the time. The picture that you see is a bird's nest in one of those bushes. But what stood out to me and disturbed me so much was the plastic bits that the birds had found and used to build their nest. You can't see it super well, but there was at least half a dozen pieces of plastic making up this bird's nest. Some of the pieces were quite big and made up a good chunk of the structure of the nest. Now, I'm no wildlife expert, but here I go trying to pronounce a big word. All right, let's try it. Ornithologists. Thank you, Kim. But ornithologists, people who study birds, have noticed this trend outside of just the church and are concerned. They worry that these materials could harm adult and baby birds, especially when baby birds think that the plastic may be food and eat it. They also noted that birds act as good biomonitoring, which means birds act as a good indicator of how the environment around them is doing by how it impacts them. The classic example of this is the canary in the coal mine, warning miners when the air is too poisonous. But we can see the same thing with plastic. This nest shows us something about our world, even if we don't necessarily want to see it. In recent years, we have found microplastics everywhere. Microplastics being microscopic plastic, microplastic. From the deepest parts of the Mariana Trench to the air that we breathe, we've found bits of microplastics in every part of the human lung, in the placenta of mothers, even in our bloodstream. Last year, scientists connected microplastics in our blood to an increased risk of heart attack and stroke, though we don't know all of its effects yet. Now, you might be wondering, gee, thanks for the uplifting message. How does this relate to our faith? But if you'll allow me, I think the effects on the world and ourselves that we are seeing actually do relate to our faith. And our faith has something to say about it too. I've mentioned before that in the book of Genesis, God hands over the authority of earth to humanity, granting them dominion over the animals, birds, plants, fish, and everything. But I've also mentioned before that the word dominion is not always super clear. Dominion makes us think of kingship or domination, of a master and servant relationship. But that's not exactly the context of what the word means in Hebrew. The Hebrew word for dominion is rada, which means to rule, but it also means responsibility. Like God rules over us, so humans are to rule over the rest of creation. We humans have a vast potential to make great things through the natural world that benefit all. We also have the vast potential to be tyrants, to lift ourselves up above creation and one another and rule for our sole benefit. That's the position God left humanity in at the garden. We had, and still do have, a choice on how we want to live as rulers. Jesus preached a ministry of compassion, of loving our neighbor and recognizing the image of God within one another. He said that God's kingdom was one where the least of these, those with no power or influence, were cared for. Walking and living like Jesus was to work for God's kingdom come, and casting off the idea of my kingdom come. To me, this picture of plastic being used to build a bird's nest is the quintessential image of humanity's kingdom come. It's us getting what we wanted without realizing the consequences. We wanted a convenient, everlasting product to hold our things, and it did just that. And in the 1960s, we started to notice that it was impacting our environment. But gosh darn it, plastic is so convenient, and it saves us money. Plus, it made some businesses very rich. So we kept using it more and more because I don't want to wash a cup. Until we reach a place where it becomes a microscopic part of our world. And we really don't know what to do about it. We've built our house upon the sand, and we've actually found that it's tiny little pieces of plastic. This isn't to say that plastic hasn't had amazing impacts on our world and made what we have today possible. It really has. But we're also reaping the consequences of using it for everything and the impact it's had on our world that we're responsible for. So what do we do? I mean, I know it seems like an insurmountable task. This isn't something a congregation, a state, or a denomination can fix. But this isn't the first time that we've gotten rid of something terrible for us on a societal level. My mother loves to remind me that when I was a boy, about Pierce's age, that smoking cigarettes was allowed everywhere, including in restaurants, in doctor's offices, and airplanes. Name a place where it wasn't allowed. Probably hospitals, I don't know. Yeah, see. I watched every single one of my genetic grandparents die horribly from the side effects and diseases caused by smoking. Secondhand smoke has killed 2,500,000 people. That's just the secondhand smoke since 1964 in the United States, just by itself. Now, smoking isn't allowed in any indoor locations in the majority of the United States. If you're looking for another example, leaded gasoline, don't make me get into that, which was terrible for the environment and health, was completely phased out of street vehicles worldwide. Sure, neither of these were quick solutions, but they were changes made by intention and push of many individuals towards a societal change. Right now, a plastic treaty is being worked on by the United Nations. There are also many, many groups of people of faith that are working towards being better caretakers of our world and one another. Interfaith Power and Light, Creation Justice Ministries, Green Faith, Faith in Place, and many others. These are all groups of people motivated by their faith to change the world, both creation and humanity, for the better. It's like the old saying goes, the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time is now. We can no longer control what we did in the past to reach this point where birds are making nests out of plastic. We cannot undo our past actions of dominion. But we can decide to be better stewards now. May our faith be the guide and the inspiration to be better rulers, and look to Christ as an example of the type of ruler that we should be.